we can always see a mixture of the color of an object and the color of its light. The lighting is, more often than not, more than one. Commonly, it would be the sun and the sky. We call them direct lighting and environment lighting. Why does it look monotonous? DL and EL make rich color changes. Which way should we go? It gives off a variety of positive feelings when we look at works that reflect DL and EL well. Realistic. Beautiful. Lively. But it's also not easy to choose one color. It's even more complicated if you have to choose colors while considering DL and EL. So we built the Shade Assistance tool with the automatic shading tool. SAT and AST is useful for the following tasks. 1. To choose colors in consideration of the sun and sky colors. 2. Makes the illustration look more lively by applying the sun and sky colors. 3. To apply colors to a grayscale painting using the sun, sky, and surface colors. So we have a sphere and a plane here to demonstrate how we can use SAT. The sphere and the plane are in different layers. So it's easy for us to apply the colors layer. First, let's bring up the PAI HUD extension from the Windows menu. Here is the Shade Assistance tool. These buttons are for color assignment. When we assign colors to these buttons, SAT generates shades based on those. These two buttons are reserved for DL and EL colors. However, the colors assigned to these buttons comes from our PAI Sky extension, which we will explain on another video for the PAI Sky extension itself. These buttons are for DL and EL colors as well. However, we can assign colors to these buttons directly, and it will override the colors assigned to the DL and EL from PAI Sky. This button is for the surface or local color of the object you're drawing. Let's assign sun, surface, and sky colors now. We'll apply sunset colors for the lighting. To show the difference between the DL and EL buttons, if we click on it now without using PAI Sky, nothing will happen. The sphere and the plane are both colored white right now. We'll apply color to the ground plane later, but let's keep the sphere's surface color as white. Once we assign sun, surface, and sky colors, SAT generates a mix of those colors. The first row shows the whole spectrum of the color mix. The second row is the mix of sun color to surface color. And the third row shows the other half from surface color to sky color. Let's add the sky color as a solid background first. Let's set the lighting around the front and somewhere the upper left here. To use the colors from SAT, just click the shade. We can mark the shades we pick using Ctrl+Click to serve as guides. We can mark shades as many as we want to. When a shade is selected, the marker is a circle, while for guides, the marker is a rectangle. And then to clear all markers, just click the CL button. When choosing shades, these colors suddenly appears. These might be familiar to you since these generated colors are based on the color theory. Depending on the shade you selected, SAT generates color schemes. So we have analogous, split complementary, triad, tetrad, and complementary color schemes. Now, this part here is the automatic shading tool. We already know what DL and EL stands for. ST stands for sunlight strength. By default, DL and EL are set to 100, which means they will be applied strongly. We can adjust the strength of DL and EL by moving the sliders to the opposite side. So if we move DL to the right, notice how the sun color disappears from the gradations. Same with EL, the sky color disappears when we move it to the left. So basically, moving the sliders affect the gradations. Then, by default ST is set to 50. Like the DL and EL sliders, moving the ST slider also affects the gradations. However, ST only affects the sun color, as we can see here as I move the slider. Notice how the sky color gets lighter as I increase the ST value. And when ST is at 100, surface color is completely mixed with DL and EL, and sky color is not dark anymore. Now, let's see the mix of colors first. The mix of colors change as we adjust the sliders. Now, I'm looking for some hue shift with the mix of colors so we can have a nice sunset color palette. I think we need to adjust the sky color so we have a better mix of colors. Let's update our sky background first. So now if we check the mix of colors again, there's already a slight shift in hue. Again, we will apply a color to the ground plane, but for now, we will focus on the sphere first. We'll apply DL and EL on the sphere first based on our light source here. Since the sphere's surface color is white, DL and EL colors will mix with it strongly. So let's adjust the settings again to something that could work better. I think the setting works best for this demonstration. So let's use it. I am also using the SB tool here, which is explained on another video. So we will just apply these colors from SAT, and then adjust the saturation and brightness with SB tool, based on the position of the light source. I think that's enough, so let's add in the ground plane. Let's apply green color to the ground plane. But we can't apply this green directly to the shape, because it is also affected by the lighting. Since this is a different surface color, we will assign it to the surface button in the SAT. Compared to the white surface color of the sphere, the lighting will mix subtly with the green color. The ground plane will reflect on the sphere as well, so it will mix with the other colors. Based on the lighting, the ground plane's color will reflect on the shaded part of the sphere. Basically, we can use the SAT-generated colors to color an object directly. Or we just need to adjust it slightly. And we can also think of it as a color palette. Anyway, I'm just adding a shadow here using the ellipse tool. Just making a few adjustments here, but that's it for the first usage. Now for the second usage, we're going to use AST. SAT's AST can be used to make images more lively by applying DL and EL to it. Here, we have an image that we got from freepik.com that we will be using to demonstrate how AST can be used. We will add the link for this image in the description below. We imported this image as bitmap, but our tool doesn't work with bitmap images, so we traced the bitmap using Animate's Trace Bitmap feature. AST can be used for vector illustrations or paintings. However, it doesn't work on gradients or symbols. It has to be applied directly to the shapes. Enter a low threshold value to keep the details, or enter a higher value to simplify the image. Using AST might take a long time if it's being applied to an illustration with many shapes, so it's better to use it to smaller samples for testing. Just like what we have here. By the way, SAT was updated in the making of this video, so now we can directly input values to the AST sliders here. Just click the numbers to open the input box. For now, let's set it back to the default. SAT doesn't generate colors with just DL and EL, so we still need to assign surface color even if it's not essential here. First, let's try to apply the default values, and then we'll adjust it based on the result. To apply AST, select the shapes or area you want to apply it to, and click the AS button. The difference in the lotus brightness in most areas compared to the dark areas is high. Therefore, most areas are affected by the DL color. Now, let's try the DL at 50. As we can see here, the DL color applied to the lotus decreased since we decreased the DL value on the AST. Now let's see the result if DL is at 0. As we can see, EL color is only applied to the shadow parts of the image, even when DL is at 0. This time, let's try it with sunset-like colors. Then, let's set ST to something lower than 50. Notice how the surface color appeared in the gradations when we set the ST to less than 50. And then set DL back to 100. DL was too strongly applied. To modify this, adjust the DL range. Let's reduce DL again. This time, we can see that the color is mostly a mix of DL and EL. This is because when ST is below 50, SAT makes the effect of mixing the DL and EL colors. Now, let's reduce ST again. It is still reflected too strongly. Because the amount of ST is pretty low, EL color affected most of the areas. This time, let's change DL color to something lighter. EL is still pretty strong, but since we reduced the EL amount, it affected the edge less compared to the previous sample. Now let's bring DL back to 100 again. DL is applied strongly here again, but since we used a lighter color, it looks much better. Now we'll try it with the bigger image. Let's adjust the settings a bit again. Using AST to large images with a lot of shapes in it might take a while. And because we just traced this image using low threshold value, it created a lot of tiny shapes for the details. Now while waiting for it to finish, you might encounter this dialog box several times. It means that the script is running too long for Animate. Clicking on Yes will let the script continue applying AS. This might take some time, so I'll cancel it when the next dialog box appears, but I'll cut it here. I'll show you another way to do this a little faster. Let's change the settings again first. Since our image is too much for Animate to process, what we'll do is select a small portion of the image one at a time and apply AS to it. AS to not select some areas twice during this process. I'm cutting the selected part, and then pasting it in place on another layer. And there we go. It only took a minute or two to apply AS to the image in this method. Another way is to separate objects or parts in your image into layers, and then apply AS in each layer separately. For the third usage, we will also use AST. AST can apply colors assigned to DL, surface, and EL to a grayscale image. This can be useful when you start working on your values first, and then coloring them later. For this demonstration, we are going to use this 3D sphere which we set up and rendered in Blender. Like in the second usage, we traced these bitmap images. And again, we will test it with smaller samples first. Let's start by assigning colors to DL, surface, and EL, and use the default AST settings. Also, please back up your file before applying AST, because Animate CC often crashes when it handles massive script operations. As we can see here, AST applied the assigned colors to DL, surface, and EL to the image. Let's observe how AST applied the colors. If we click the darkest part in the shadow, we can see that AS applied EL color to it, but it kept the values intact. If we click the lightest part here, we can see that AS applied DL color to it. As for the surface color, AST applied the mixed version of it to the image. The shades generated by SAT are the same shades being applied to the image, but AST applies the colors while keeping the values of the image. Now, let's change the surface color and then reduce ST. Notice how the darkest shade here became more saturated compared to the first sample, while the lightest shade is mostly the same. Since we changed the surface color, the shades changed slightly. However, the color applied is still that of a mixed shade. For the next one, let's change DL color and set ST back to default. To quickly set ST back to default, double-click the number. DL seems to be strongly applied since the color we chose was pretty saturated. Let's change the DL color to something that's not too saturated. Let's also reduce ST. Notice the mix of colors here. When ST value is lower than 50, DL is mixed with EL. This effect can be used to get sunset-like color palette. We can see those shades being applied in these parts. If we compare this to the previous one, the darkest part is again more saturated this time, and the bright parts now has hue shift compared to the previous one. Let's try to reduce DL and keep the other settings. We can see the difference here when DL is reduced. The pinkish hue is more prominent now compared to the previous sample. DL and EL is not limited to sunlight and sky blue colors. You can assign any colors to them to create your own color palette depending on your needs or preferences. Now, let's apply the same colors as the first sample to this bigger sphere image. Again, just click Yes to continue applying AS. That's it. Next, we'll show you another example for the third usage, but this time, we will use it with an illustration. For this example, we have here the mountain landscape that we painted some time ago. We're not going to use everything for this demonstration though. We will just use these parts here which we changed to grayscale using SAT as well. These trees. These mountain parts. These clouds. And this ground part. I already have the base colors for the sun, sky, and surface colors that we used for the other parts. For consistency, I will use these colors for this demonstration. Let's start with the ground first. I'll apply the default settings for the base shade. We have a tool that can apply labels on shades, that's why there are letters on top of each group of shades. It helps to locate the layers quickly. That tool will be explained on another video. AST can be used even if there are separate layers. However, layers are useful to separate parts that have different surface colors. AST can also be used on transparent shades. After applying AS, you might still want to edit the result, and you can do it with our other tools. Like here, I want to change the color of this part. I'm using the Change Hue tool here, which changes the hue of the selected shapes. It applies the color on the color picker tool. To adjust the brightness or saturation of multiple shades at the same time, you can use the SV tool, which is also explained further on another video. Next, we will apply AS to the trees here in front. First, let's assign the tree's surface color first. This part is the highlight, so I'm going to decrease the L and increase ST. Next are the middle tone shades, which are on a different layer. I'm setting ST to default and adjust both DL and EL. Since I applied two different settings, there's no smooth transition in the colors, so I'm applying another AS. This looks better, but I want the lighter shades to look more green, so I'll use the Change Hue tool again. I'm going to make a few more adjustments, but let's skip that. Same with the other tree. We're going to apply different AST settings here as well for each shade layer. I'm also going to change the DL color. Next, we're going to apply AS to the trees in the middle ground. Same process as the previous trees. You might notice the other tree got colored as well. That's because it is the same symbol as the other one. Next, we will color the mountain using AS. Just like the trees, the mountain is also made out of multiple overlapping layers. First, let's assign the mountain surface color. AS applied the colors a bit saturated, so we'll need to adjust the saturation. I'm using the SB tool again to do that. It's the same for other layers. When you don't like how the colors turned out after applying AS, you can undo it. However, be careful on doing that with bigger areas. There's a chance it might cause the program to crash. Anyway, I applied the same settings for all bright areas, and only changing it for the dark areas. So basically, it's up to you on how you will use the tool. This needs more adjustment, so let's skip that. Now let's move on to the other part of the mountain. I'm temporarily changing the surface color for some grass shades. And back to the mountain surface color. Again, this needs some adjustments, so we'll skip that again. Now, let's move on to the clouds. Here's the result of applying AS with some adjustments. Basically, AS can help lay out the colors for you in a grayscale image, and then adjust it as necessary or however you want using the other tools. Quick recap of SAT's 3 usages. Again, SAT can be used to generate color gradations that you can choose from, based on your sun and sky colors. SAT's AST can be used to improve the colors of an image by applying DL and EL lighting. Lastly, it can apply colors on a grayscale image automatically using your DL, EL, and surface colors. And that's it. We hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.